Good afternoon. Police Service Board Chair, members of the Police Services Board, Chief DeCare, Deputy Chief Gert, Acting Deputy Chief Shea, senior officers, members of the Police Service, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maggie Schoen, and I'm the Executive Officer to Chief DeCare. Today, I would like to present the members of the month for April. Can I have the following officers please come forward? Sergeant Nancy Lantz, Detective Constable Carrie Denick, Constable Lorraine Edwards, Constable Chris Elliott, and Constable Stephen Holmes. Unfortunately, Constable Dennis Sivalak was unable to make it today. The officers are being recognized for their exemplary service for the following. At approximately 1 a.m. on February 16th, officers were dispatched to attend the Hamilton City Centre on James Street North in regards to an emotionally disturbed person who was threatening suicide. The male had entered the mall by unknown means and was found by mall security standing on the outside of the third-level railing, threatening to jump. Officer Steve Holmes was one of the first officers on scene, joined by our emergency response officers. They secured the area, and Steve began communication with the male. Trained crisis negotiators were called to the scene to continue communication and to employ de-escalation techniques. Officer Zivalak was the first negotiator on scene and was soon joined by Officer Edwards. Both officers assisted Officer Holmes. A long session of negotiations ensued, attempting to build rapport with the male. The negotiations entered a second phase at approximately 6 a.m., 6 hours after the start, as Officer Lantz and Officer Elliott took over, joined by Officer Denick. At this point, a cell phone was introduced to the male. Nearing the end of a telephone conversation, his disposition eroded considerably. Officers believed that the male had come to a point where he was seriously considering ending his life by jumping. The officers seized the opportunity to take hold of the suspect and pull him over the railing. The male was quickly and safely taken directly to hospital for treatment. He suffered no physical injury and remained in hospital for further assistance. These officers are being commended for their use of communication, de-escalation techniques, and alternative strategies that brought about the successful conclusion to a very tense situation. At no point during the 12-hour standoff did they lose focus or deter from their objective, resulting in the saving of this man's life. Congratulations.
I got one now.
Chair and members of the board, I would invite to join me down here Jean Garcinia and Chantel Motohogora. Ladies and gentlemen, on Saturday, May the 3rd, the Rwandan Canadian community of Hamilton along with members of the wider community of Hamilton, came together to recognize the 20th anniversary commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi of Rwanda. The Police Service Board was represented during that day by Member Levy. The struggle to comprehend the incomprehensible of the 100 Days of Hell of 1994 in Rwanda is a struggle that will remain with humanity for the foreseeable future, and our 21st century, characterized by sound bites, that culture provides no easy answer to the atrocities that took place. It requires a much larger dialogue. And with unparalleled courage, strength, and resiliency, the Rwandan community, both locally and internationally, have demonstrated to the entire world the power of reconciliation, forgiveness, courage, and hope. And making no claims at a perfect solution, Rwandans have continued to seek the path forward, to heartily embrace the opportunities for meaningful dialogue across a spectrum of differences framing the fabric of the Rwandan society, and to engage in honest, painful conversations in the myriad of forums and the panels across the Rwandan countryside, all to rebuild and to reclaim their identity as Rwandans, to shape the ownership of their future and their own destiny. The local Rwandan community is less than 100 families, and they have left an indelible impact on the Hamilton community since arriving almost 20 years ago, taking the time to share the unimaginable horrors while at the same time allowing no place for vengeful bitterness or looking backwards. Through the leadership of Jean and Chantal, the Hamilton Police Service has had the opportunity to increase our own awareness and understanding and how to better serve and to work with members of the community who hail from many war-torn regions across the globe. And through this healthy partnership, members of the Hamilton Police Service now share a more personal and realistic view of the Rwandan genocide and the power of resilient people. Through our Sunday school sessions, our lunch and learns, and our other platforms, Rwandans have shared, engaged, and allowed us the opportunity to stand with you shoulder to shoulder as you continue to heal, as you continue to grow in many yet untold ways. And this journey was humbled for us again as an organization, as we were reminded that to us, we must never take our role as police for granted in enabling the safe and secure society for everyone, and serving as neutral peacekeepers to all the members of the human family, regardless of any differences. Members of the board, members of the police service, Jean and Chantal, we have you here today to recognize and to honor your contribution to Hamilton, to the local Rwandan community, and to accept the Chief's Pride Award in recognition for your stellar community work and the resiliency and strength that you have demonstrated, which is an example to all of us.
It's really very difficult for me to even have enough words to express my gratitude, and I'm sure my community feels the same way, because I do know, even if our names have been called up here, but I know this award is for all the community, all the survivors of Tutsi genocide who made their way to this beautiful city of Hamilton, and we have found really our healing process here with the support of everyone here and the entire community of Hamilton. I'm humbled, I'm very emotional, I'm just speechless. Thank you so much.
We gotta get a picture. I'd now like to call back to the podium Staff Sergeant Maggie Schoen to present the badge presentations.
Can I please have retired Officer Randy Drum and Serving Officer Matthew Drum please come forward? In May of 1981, Randy Drum graduated from the Ontario Police College and was presented with badge number 377. He was assigned to uniform patrol at the Kenilworth Station and had a very fulfilling 30-year career with the Hamilton Police Service as a training officer, acting sergeant, undercover drug officer, street crime unit, homicide investigator, crime beat manager, and retired as a fraud investigator. During an altercation while in plainclothes, badge number 377 was lost during an arrest. 6 months later, an officer located it in a private residence, and Officer Drum regained his badge number 377. It was meant to be his, until now. On December 12, 1985, Randy became a proud father to Matthew Robert Drum. Randy knew Matt was born to be a police officer. When Matt was 9 or 10 years old, he collected Pepsi bottle top liners all summer to earn a free Pepsi watch. At school, Matt needed to take the watch off for a sports event and later saw another student wearing it. The teacher initially was unable to prove who owned the watch until Matt asked the teacher to ask the student to access the alarm feature, to find out what time the alarm was set for. The other student slowly broke down and Matt was given back his watch. Even at an early age, Matt was demonstrating the relentless pursuit of offenders, interrogation techniques, the value of circumstantial evidence, and ultimately he convicted his accused. On August 28, 2012, Matthew Drum was hired by the Hamilton Police Service and was issued badge number 1228. He has worn the badge proudly for over a year and has listened to the stories from his fellow officers about his father, Randy. In December 2013, Matthew has requested what process he needed to go through to be assigned his father's badge. And today, the Hamilton Police Service is honored to continue the Drum family tradition of having badge 377. Matt, your dad wanted to give you a piece of advice. Your badge, it's a shield. It's a symbolic statement that says you defend the lives and property of the people of your community. Always remember who gives you the badge and the authority that comes with it. You have a covenant with your community. They have put their trust in you. Perform your duties with integrity, accountability, and respect for all, and the community will stand behind you and support you through all you do. Officer Randy Drum, please do the honor of presenting your son, Matthew Drum, with badge 377.
Did he want to come back? Absolutely. Go ahead, Madeline.
Thank you, Lloyd. I just wanted to make a statement about the Rwandan genocide commemoration, the 20 years, Kwibuka, remembering. It was a proud moment for our community, working with the Rwandans in the reconciliation, in the healing. Being in attendance at that event, having worked many, many years in Holocaust, genocide studies, the particular moment when I saw in the audience so many police officers, and the chief, Sandra Wilson was there, the chief was there, working with these communities. The chief was called up to be presented with an award that afternoon. It was the most incredible moment where where they shared in speaking about the relationship with the Hamilton Police. So many of them came to this country with broken lives. All of their members of their family were massacred in the most brutal 100 days, massacred. Children, mothers, fathers. And to come to this country where the police are held in such high esteem was a trigger for them. They had such fearfulness of the police. But working with the community, going to the lunch and learns, and all of the wonderful support in building bridges, building hope, building safety, that afternoon, Chief DeCare was presented with, and I don't exactly know what it is, it looked like a shepherd's staff, the most beautiful expression of hopefulness, of safety, of security that was presented to a father. For me, it almost resembled when Moses was in the desert and he was given this shepherd staff to deliver the people. I believe at that commemoration, the Hamilton Police, with the chief at the helm, was given this award in recognition for shepherding this group to Hamilton and being part of our community. And so I wish that that staff was here, and the words Chantel delivered to the Hamilton Police Service for their dedicated commitment to ensuring the safety and security and the reconciliation and hope for the Rwandan community. So I thank you very much for the presentation today, to them, for the remarkable work of their community.
Thank you, Member Levy. That's well said. And I'd now like to call back to the podium Staff Sergeant Shuin for another presentation.
May I please ask Constable Vince Stars to come forward to be recognized for his work with a Level 3 Chief's Commendation. For over 19 years, you have been an outstanding member of the Hamilton Police Service, and your exceptional efforts in the first 4 months of 2014 have been truly remarkable and worthy of a more formal acknowledgement. Your extraordinary efforts in the last few months have had an enormous impact on our community. On January 7th, you made an arrest for dangerous operation and flight from police with additional impaired charges. On January 27th, you located a stolen vehicle, initiated and discontinued a pursuit, then located and arrested the suspect, laying additional drug-related charges. On February 14th, you observed a male pulling a recycling bin full of various items. Upon investigation, the male was arrested and is facing charges of break and enter. On February 23rd, you observed a parked stolen auto which was linked to several other stolen autos. An identified suspect fled in the stolen auto, leaving behind his girlfriend and property. Through your investigation, connections were made to numerous stolen autos and entries into residences. He was arrested on February 27th. On April 2nd, you stopped a rental vehicle with 2 occupants and the driver fled. A foot pursuit occurred and the driver arrested. A loaded semi-automatic handgun was located. Further charges of drug trafficking were laid for both occupants. And on April 14th, you observed a wanted male from a robbery that occurred on April 2nd. He was located and arrested without incident. These are but a few notable arrests that Vince Stars has made recently. He is to be commended for his tenacity and actions in pursuit of public safety. In support of the Hamilton Police Service's values, he has truly demonstrated the relentless pursuit of offenders. Congratulations, Officer Vince Stars.
Congratulations. Well done. Well, what a nice way to start a meeting. These are great presentations. I had the opportunity, along with other members of the board, to attend the service awards last Monday. Another great night. We not only we saw the 2030 and there's 140-year service, but there was also a lot of members of the public who had put their own lives at risk to help their fellow man. And it was great to see them recognized. One struck me with, he said he took a knife off someone. I said, "You actually saw the knife?" He says, "Oh yeah, I just went up, took it away, just nonchalantly." And but it's great to see us recognize achievers in our community like we did tonight. Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you now to start the introduction of the 3 presentations tonight.
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the board. I'd invite Mr. Bailey down to make a presentation in regards to our online reporting. This is a process that we put in place a number of months ago as a pilot, a soft launch, and now as a result of what we're seeing in the technical world and people that are applying for vulnerable screening checks, we will be advancing the marketing of this, and Mr. Bailey will give us an update.
Is your microphone turned on? You have to push that button.
I did. Oh, there we are. Okay, I turned it off. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Chief DeCare, deputies, senior officers, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Bailey. I'm manager of our Records Business Center. Back in October, the board approved the new online police check process. That allows citizens, as the chief mentioned, who need police records checks for volunteer employment purposes, the opportunity to avoid having to attend our office in person by giving them the convenience of applying from home. We have great expectations for this program and believe it will divert a significant number of people from our lobby, from long wait times in our lobby, and attract them to use this very convenient alternative. We did a soft launch in early December, which was intended to allow us to evaluate the system and discover process efficiencies using a much smaller number of applications. Other than brief media attention at first and announcements on our social feeds and a link on our website, most of our advertising for this program has been done through signage in our lobby, as well as the excellent work done by police service volunteers who greet people as they come into the Station 10 lobby. They see long lineups, and the volunteers usually will qualify them for the type of police check they need and often steer them to the alternative of having to wait in the lobby by going home and applying online. In the first 4 months, just under 10% of our total number of police checks have come to us through the online applications. This has diverted almost 600 people from our lobby. This is actually better than we expected, particularly because they haven't really done any strong marketing of the program as yet. The feedback from customers has been very positive. Some have offered suggestions that have helped us improve how information is displayed or to add new information to assist people through the process. Our solution has since been adopted by the Chatham, Kent, London, and Niagara Police Services. Their videos and website are based on scripts and content originally developed by the Hamilton Police Service. The Halton, Ottawa, Brantford, and Belleville services will also be launching the very same online application in the coming months. The report you have reviewed shows online data for the first 4 months of the program. The number of applications continues to grow as people find their way to the site and realize the convenience it offers. I now have the April data in hand, and I can tell you that 251 people used the site in April, up from 187 the previous month. And as of today, over 900 citizens have taken advantage of this convenience and have been able to stay out of our lobby. We continue to work in partnership with the website provider, Forest Green Solutions, to make improvements to the customer experience, as well as add new content to assist citizens and employers in making the correct choices. We have videos and content on the site designed to guide employers on how to handle police check data responsibly and make informed decisions, as well as information to guide citizens with minor criminal convictions or very old criminal records on how to go about applying for a pardon without the need to use expensive private companies to assist them. New content will include information to highlight the differences in value in a police check conducted by a municipal police service in comparison to a third-party provider. Future enhancements will include an online appointment booking system for people who need civil fingerprinting. This will allow us to spread the workload much more efficiently and while providing citizens with shorter wait times and greater flexibility for available appointment times. We're very proud of this new system. It's working very well. It has exceeded our expectations. As the premier customer and developer of this solution, we continue to receive upgrades and enhancements from Forest Green at no cost to the service. The new content that we provide is offered to other police services as well, and as more services sign on, we will benefit from the new content and enhancements that they develop as well. It's been a truly collaborative experience. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on this initiative.
Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, and certainly with technology, it's time to optimize the services and reach out to the community and certainly take them out of the brick and mortar and put them in their virtual homes to access information. So that's great work. Good to hear, see the numbers going up. I'm more curious on the policy of what is being released, and I think you're here to present on the shift in regards to the access to get those police checks. So, Mr. Chair, just looking for some guidance, because there's been a topical issue where there seems to be different standards from police service to police service on police checks with employers. For example, in some areas they'll just release the conviction information, in other areas they'll release everything. So even if you had contact with the police, such as the example in the paper with the person who was going to be a nurse, I think at one of the colleges, institutions in Toronto, he was prejudiced as a result of that information. So I guess I'm looking for some clarity. What is our practice here, and how deep do we go in the release of information?
Peter, can you answer that, or do you want me to turn to the front row here?
I can certainly answer that, sir. We have always adhered very closely to the LEARN guidelines. LEARN is an organization that is part of the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. They develop guidelines on consistent release, and we have followed those. We have, over the years, and in much more recently, made changes, proactive changes, to the way we release information and the type of information we release. For example, mental health contacts. We have every mental health contact, incident report where someone has applied for a police screening check and we see that information actually comes directly to me to be vetted. And I can tell you that in the last few months that I've been doing that personally, I've not released a single mental health contact, and there have been quite a few. We have also, in February, the OACP put out a notice of having to do exactly with the information that you're referring to, Councillor, the release of non-conviction information. At the direction of Chief DeCare, we have revisited our policies on that, and we are now disclosing non-conviction information far less. In fact, we will only disclose it where there's a legitimate public safety concern. So the amount of information we're releasing on police checks has been reduced significantly. We're very alive to the issues that are in the paper now, that are just hitting the paper now, that Toronto is experiencing. We're happy to say that we are actually a step ahead on it, and we're very, very careful about the information we release. And we look forward to revised LEARN guidelines that we expect to come out later this year, which will probably be in line with what we're doing right now.
Appreciate that. Help me understand. You're indicating that there's discretion that being exercised by the services and what information is being released.
Yes.
I'm asking about non-convictions. So, because I don't, many common people, I don't think realize that any contact with the police is information that they, unfortunately, are unable to release and prejudice their futures. So I'm trying to understand exactly when you say in exceptional circumstances you will release that. That's a discretion call. Help me understand who gives you the discretion to make that call, and how do you adjudicate?
We have published guidelines that we follow for consistency. And as I said, we have made some changes to those guidelines in the interest of brevity. We're not releasing as much information as we did. Where we have a non-conviction, police contact information, or somewhere where somebody was charged but not convicted of an offense, then those are looked at very closely. They're reviewed by myself and another individual, and I also, on occasion, will consult with Acting Deputy Shea. We have a process called the reconsideration process, which we introduced a few years ago, which allows people to challenge the information that's released on their police check. And bear in mind that information is released directly to them. It does not go to the employer. They have the opportunity to challenge the information on there, present a case as to why they feel the information should not be on there. Those reconsideration requests come to me. and I review them, and occasionally with the acting deputy Shea as well, and we will make a determination on whether or not we should continue to release that information. I can't give you the exact number of reconsideration requests we've had. They're a fair number, and I would say it would be fair to say about 95% were successful.
That's actually more comforting hearing that. I guess, and I imagine this is an evolution that's taking place.
Yes.
But the general public feel that, in our society, you're innocent until proven guilty, and then you go through a due process. The conviction is rendered. That's part of your record. I don't think anyone realizes that if they made a silly mistake or was in the wrong place at the wrong time in their childhood, that if they're applying for a job today, that you could actually release information that could ruin their history, their future. So that's where I'm having some challenges is how do we get in a situation where just having contact with the police is part of that record?
We have numerous contacts for people, as you're well aware. There's certain information that we reject out of hand. We don't release complainant or victim information. We don't release witness information or reporter information. We will release accused information where there was a conviction, and we also release the criminal record. We will look very closely at information where there are allegations of crime, but charges were not laid. In most cases, we won't release that. We will look at information where charges were laid but did not lead to a conviction. In most cases, we will not release that information. The circumstances where we would release non-conviction information, particularly now and since February when we revised our release policies, the occasions where we would release non-conviction information would have to be exceptional.
I really appreciate that. And I guess just to finish, is there somebody grabbing the bull by the horn, so to speak, on this issue provincially, and then provide a dictate to the police services across Ontario, if not the country, but certainly Ontario, and creating very strict guidelines on what information should be released by the so there's because it seems to me there's a bit of a patchwork. Different services are doing different things to create a standard across the board.
There is a standard now, but that standard, there is general agreement amongst the chiefs that standard needs to be revisited. The Canadian Civil Liberties Union, the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario have both looked at this, and they have lobbied very hard to the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police to make these changes. The LEARN group, under the direction of the OACP, are in the process of developing revised guidelines. Police services, in the absence of revised guidelines, police services were advised to look at our own policies for release and make responsible decisions. We have done that.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. I think it was not only informative for myself hearing the answers to the questions, but certainly anyone viewing this presentation. It gives some relief, especially understanding that this information would go directly to the individual who has a chance to contest it, and at least some resolution process is engaged or is available to them in this process.
I should add that since we've made this decision back in February, the number of reconsideration requests was never very high to begin with compared to the number of applications. They've gone down to 0.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good report. Walt?
Just your per transaction fee, is that still the same as the last presentation?
Currently, yes. We've not made any changes to our prices for online pricing.
Would you be so kind to repeat that for me? What is the transaction for each person actually getting this service?
What's the cost of each transaction?
Well, there's a fee, right?
Correct.
There's a fee to the service makes money, but also what does the website charge the service?
Forest Green Solutions, actually TransUnion, who's the credit agency who actually does the background, the authentication on the identification, they charge a fee of $9.95 for that process. That's not something that we can influence. That's the cost of doing business for them. It's a convenience fee, if you will. I mean, people have the option not to pay that. They can come into our front counter. And that being said, up to today, over 900 people have chosen that to take that extra fee, and that's right up front. People know that. As a trade-off to finding parking, waiting in our lobby, it seems to be a reasonable offset.
Well, thank you. I wasn't trying to be critical with the question.
No, I understand.
Just I think $9 is pretty reasonable for a credit check
Yes.
today. Thank you.
Just on that, Peter, what's the total cost? $9.95 is what the service provider charges. What's the police charge for a police check?
Well, there are 3 levels of police checks, and there's 2 different versions of each
For a
police
hockey
check.
coach?
Well, a hockey coach would need a vulnerable sector check, and that would be for, and they would be volunteers, of course, so that would be $25, whether it's at their front counter or online. The only difference online is there's an extra $9.95 for.
It was $35 online, $25 they walk in the front door.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Great presentation. I love the way this thing is taking off. And just when we're speaking to service clubs or sports groups who regularly are people who have to get police checks, we have to remember a lot of websites in our lives. If we just Google Hamilton Police Services, is there a link on the homepage where you can go to get these police checks?
There is a link on our homepage, and when we revise our website, which I believe is going to happen sooner than later, there'll be a much more prominent link on our website, but it is on our homepage right now.
Okay, that's the easiest way to describe to the public how to get there.
You can also find a link to it, as you said, through a Google search.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. I see no more questions. A great presentation.
Thank you.
Steve, you want to introduce the second presentation?
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the board. It is an honor to present to you the 2013 annual report. I would ask Barry Munger to join us at the front. And I want to recognize, as they're making their way up here, the work that is being done in the crime prevention and the volunteer sector of our service. And Barry Munger is joined by Lindsay Sindri, and I want to recognize Lori Porthouse, as well as Inspector Raston. There's an awful lot of work that's getting done in the crime prevention area, and this report is a good characterization of that. All of the research continues to point us in the direction of spending more time on education and prevention, with the collateral payoffs down the road in the reductions of crime.
Thanks, Chief, and very welcome, and congratulations. I know you were the key organizer for Police in the Park on Friday. That was a well-attended event, and I appreciate you being here tonight. So the podium is yours. No, I don't think it is. Just push the button.
Is it on now? Yeah. Okay. Chair, members of the Police Services Board, Chief, deputies, senior officers, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. The Hamilton Police Service Crime Prevention Branch, often referred to as Community Services, is responsible for researching best practices, developing crime prevention initiatives, raising awareness, and engaging the community at large. So how do we accomplish this? Well, today's presentation will not only cover the accomplishments of crime prevention during the 2013 year, but also the accomplishments of our Crime Prevention Center volunteers. A decade ago, crime prevention consisted of a small handful of officers, but we've evolved into a well-coordinated operation which enlists the use of over 100 volunteers. It's a logical partnership because both branches are interested in mobilizing the community to enhance safety and reduce victimization. In accordance with our Police Services 2013 to 2015 business plan, Crime Prevention and Volunteer Services selected a number of target goals. Goals 1.2 through 4.4 embody much of the work that's done. For simplicity's sake, and to avoid duplication, we've done our best to categorize each crime prevention activity under one goal. This can be challenging since most initiatives meet several identified goals. But please keep in mind that this presentation is not an all-inclusive look at what crime prevention does, but rather a brief look at the heart of what we do. Traffic safety. It continues to be one of our community's primary concerns. So it's no coincidence that a heavy focus has been placed here. Hamilton Police Service volunteers facilitate programs like Speed Watch, Red Light Runner, Stop Sign Runner, seatbelt infractions, and handheld devices. Their aggressive driver hotline handled 804 calls in 2013, and these trained volunteers installed more than 1,200 car seats. Last year, volunteers visited over 300 locations across the city, and a few days pass when a team of volunteers aren't monitoring an identified location or intersection. The 2013 numbers are astonishing. volunteers sent more than 12,000 violation letters to automobile owners, almost doubling the number of citizens notified of their infractions in 2012. Be reminded that these efforts are in addition to the enormous amount of enforcement done by our uniformed patrol officers. In addition to the work of our volunteers, the Crime Prevention Office is also heavily involved in road safety initiatives. Our Cyclemania program, Hamilton's largest bicycle safety program, trains over 5,000 elementary school students annually. And we've partnered with the Canadian Automobile Association to facilitate our city's only safety patroller training program, which trains close to 900 elementary school students each fall. We also responded to Goal 1.2 with an auto theft prevention video. An experienced thief can steal a car in under 30 seconds. So for this reason, we created a public service announcement designed to reduce auto theft. The following 30-second video can be seen on our YouTube site and was played at Hamilton Bulldog hockey games.
A car thief can steal a vehicle in under 30 seconds. Relative to other communities in Ontario, vehicle owners in Hamilton have a higher chance of falling victim to auto theft. Ensure your doors are locked, windows are up, and take your keys with you. Park in well-lit areas. Remove all valuables from sight. Call 911 if you see suspicious vehicle-related activity. Time's up.
Goal 1.3 requires us to provide knowledge and skills to the public. Community presentations are in high demand for delivery by school officers and volunteers. Ongoing research and frequent updates ensure consistent messaging is both age and content appropriate, while adhering to ministry curriculum guidelines. The first two presentations listed here, substance abuse and kids and drugs, were created in part as an answer to the Skinner inquest. We hosted a taxi cab safety forum in November's Crime Prevention Week, which dozens of local cab drivers and taxi owners attended, and we provided important safety information to the ground transportation industry. But one of our most notable programs is Safeguard. Trained auxiliary officers performed 57 security audits, advising property owners of ways to secure and target harden their places against crime like break-and-enters. The Lock It or Lose It program uses windshield flyers to educate owners to the importance of locking their autos and removing valuables from sight. Again, here's a map that demonstrates the magnitude of work being done by volunteers with our Lock It or Lose It program in all three divisions. Almost 40,000 flyers were dispersed during 2013. Security audits, whether a safeguard audit performed by an auxiliary officer or a SEPTED audit performed by our crime prevention officers, allow us to share safety responsibilities with the community. By choosing to implement our security recommendations, both home and business owners take steps towards reducing victimization. Our service also routinely disperses crime alerts, one-page flyers which inform the public of an identified crime spike in their neighborhood. These flyers provide tips and advice to be implemented by the homeowner. The Hamilton Police Service is constantly looking for ways to connect with our communities. Programs like Cops and Cats maintain partnerships with McMaster Children's Hospital, St. Joe's Healthcare Foundation, and the Ticats while building bridges with adults and youths from many diverse communities. Last year's rendition of The Journey allowed our service to partner with youth from Roma and Iraq communities on a one-day trip to Circle Square Ranch, where we engaged in team-building activities like rock climbing, rope climbing, and archery. Volunteers have been given a plethora of tasks in recent years. Currently, they participate in an unprecedented number of programs, events, and activities. To be specific, volunteers participated in 55 different various events during 2013. Problem-oriented policing projects, or POP projects as we call them, afford volunteers further opportunity for work. Last year, there was a record number of POP projects, 93 projects service-wide, and volunteers had a hand in many of the 32 traffic projects, assisting with a variety of road safety programs at various identified locations. Our police service has worked diligently to increase diversity within our organization, but nowhere is it more apparent than in the volunteer branch. Volunteer coordinator Lori Porthouse, her efforts have virtually quadrupled the opportunities for college and university placements within our police service. We've partnered with universities like McMaster, Windsor, Guelph-Humber, and colleges like Mohawk, Niagara, and Trios. Outreach presentations at these sites have afforded an opportunity to locate and bring aboard diverse applicants. New for 2013, Citizens Police College underwent a major design change. Community meetings with several diverse English second language groups resulted in an idea to modify presentations to address their concerns. New presentations like the role of police and courts in Canada stimulated overwhelming interest with 45 participants. This format brought Citizens Police College back to its root intention. In the past, there was no actual pathway for volunteers to progress forward within our organization. Recently, the volunteer process has evolved into an effective means by which volunteers can now advance within our organization. For example, once a volunteer has 6 months of service, they then become eligible for consideration as an auxiliary officer. Auxiliary officers are then in a position to potentially become police officers. This new internal mentoring process works. In 2013, 5 auxiliaries were hired as constables, and 3 out of 4 cadets are volunteers. In addition to the many activities mentioned, Crime Prevention continues to plan and facilitate annual favorites like Police Week, Crime Prevention Week, Cop Camp, and all of the events held during those weeks. In a nutshell, that's a peek at 2013. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Barry. Any members, any questions from the board? Seeing none, thanks very much, Barry. A great presentation. You have no questions, so you explained yourself very well.
Thank you very much.
Steve, you want to introduce the third presentation?
Thank you very much. The third presentation, I would ask Marty Schulenberger to come down and join us. It's a pleasure to present the Action Strategy Annual Report, the strategy itself being comprehensive and interwoven through many departments within the service. And the strategy components include the team itself, the bail compliance, the social navigator, and our mounted patrol. And to cover their activity, Staff Sergeant Schulenberger and Inspector Raston.
Well, welcome. Are you going to kick it off, Scott, or are you going to?
Start with Marty.
Okay. Welcome, Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just get right up to the microphone so we can hear you.
This is still on?
Just tap it so we can tell. Yep.
There we go. Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Chief, Deputy, Senior Command, and everyone else present. It certainly is our pleasure to be here this afternoon to talk about the action strategy and how it has been successful for not just the police service, but also the community over the course of the last year. It's been just over a year since we were here last, and certainly there's been lots of developments, and some of those things we want to share with you this evening. You have in front of you the report, the annual report. It is very comprehensive, as the Chief mentioned. There's a number of details there for you to peruse, and the presentation that we have in front of you this evening is just intended to be a summary, a short summary in terms of some of the highlights of that report. You will notice right from the beginning that the report highlights 8 different goals 8 different goals that the police service has in terms of its annual business plan, or sorry, its 3-year business plan. And the report here in front of you will highlight 8 of them. And this evening, when we speak, we'll be touching on 4 of those different goals, including public safety, and also using volunteers, and a couple other goals that we'll touch on. So just to start, the action strategy, it's important to remember that the action team and the action strategy is in fact a strategic approach to deploying our resources. It really is an investment, an operational investment in prevention. And the chief mentioned that as well, and it was also referenced in Sergeant Munger's presentation. This is all about being strategic about our resources and having the courage to take our resources and invest them in prevention. So as we go through the presentation, you'll see that our deployment is very targeted. It's not random. We've learned from contemporary literature and research that random patrol, in fact, is not successful, and that we need to be a little bit more strategic about how we deploy. Okay, so the action strategy itself, in terms of content, includes a number of different units. And just to back up slightly, the action unit falls under the mandate of the Community Mobilization Division. This division was created in 2010 under the direction of Chief DeCare, and it includes all things preventative. So in that division, we have the action team itself, we have the bail compliance unit, we have the mounted patrol unit, and we also have the social navigation program. The division itself is much larger than that. We're going to focus on just these components this evening. So getting right into some numbers, we think these are the good news pieces of this report. Looking at how we've done in terms of operational statistics, and just to back up a little bit before you look at the numbers, we deploy to 3 main areas within the City of Hamilton based on hotspot analysis. The primary one is the downtown core. The second one is the McQuestion neighborhood in Division 2, and the third one is the Concession Street area in Division 3. Those 3 areas were identified as a result of some intensive analysis done by our corporate planning branch in consultation with our crime managers. So the numbers that we have in front of you this evening, the first screen up in front of you will show violent crime in general and robberies in specific in terms of how they've trended over 5 years. And, oh, I just hit the wrong button there, so I'll back up a minute here. So if you look at the numbers in front of you, you'll see violent crime in our downtown core area is down 36% over 5 years, and robbery is down a whopping 52% total over 5 years in our downtown quadrant. So very, very good numbers to be taking a look at. And I also want to qualify the fact that this is not just the work of the action team. It's very important to understand that the action team deploys in collaboration with crime managers, patrol officers, other POP projects that are going on in the divisions as well. This is a cumulative effect of the way we're deploying these resources. So the next slide in front of you here is looking at the McQuestion neighborhood, both in terms of robberies and total disorder around violent crime. So we're looking at a 40% reduction in violent crime in the McQuestion neighborhood over the 5-year average, and a 75% reduction in robberies. Moving on to the Concession Street area, same thing there, great news, looking at a 53% reduction in violent crime. This is just Concession Street, measuring just Concession Street, and a 50% reduction in robberies there. Hess Village is a separate area that has caused us particular challenges over the course of the years, so we have extracted data and measured that somewhat separately. This presentation is not to be a comprehensive review of Hess Village and the operations there, but we will speak to some of the numbers. You'll notice that violent crime has not changed. In fact, we're at the same level we were 3 years ago. We certainly do have challenges there. Those numbers are related to primarily to some of the more higher-end violent crimes. So when you look at sexual assaults, assaults with weapons, so beer bottles and those kinds of things, that would fall in that violent crime category. So we still have some challenges there. The good news is that robberies are still down 21%, assaults are down in Hess Village, disturbances are down, theft from auto is down, and auto theft in that area. So there is some good news there, but also some challenges for us moving forward. This is a map that shows the city of Hamilton, and you've probably had the liberty to see this diagram already from corporate services. What this does is really takes a step back. The action strategy was implemented 2010, but what's been the impact on the city over the course of those 5 years? And has there been, most importantly, has there been any displacement, negative displacement that's affected the rest of the city? So this hotspot analysis will demonstrate where the violent crime was trending and where it is now located. So as I toggle this, you should see a slow overlay that will show a substantially reduced hotspot area in terms of violent crime. This, of course, is very good news for us, and most importantly, it's demonstrating to us that we have not seen displacement. So although there's been additional resources invested in certain areas, we haven't seen that displacement pushed out to others, creating really more problems in other areas. So this is a pretty key analysis for us. So looking at the big picture numbers, we know that Statistics Canada reported in 2012, report came out last year, that Hamilton led the country with a 19% reduction in violent crime. We're happy to report that in 2013, measuring the same similar data, we're down 13% over the year prior. So this trend is continuing, and it's obviously in the direction that we want to see it go. Okay, looking again at other types of crime. So we just looked at robbery and violent crime, looking at other types of crime. So assaults, robberies, theft from auto, and auto theft. This is the downtown core. It's a whole bunch of numbers there, but I'll summarize them for you. Assaults themselves are down 14% in the downtown core over the 5-year average. Robberies are down 21% over the 5-year average. Theft from auto, 59%, and auto theft itself, 24%. So again, great news here. Just briefly going to touch on Hess Village in the context of the mounted unit being one of the pieces of the action strategy under the community mobilization umbrella. Mounted unit again has 5 key features: crime prevention and POP projects, monitoring entertainment districts, ground search and rescue, parks and trails, and community relations. One of the most important areas that we deploy is Hess Village, and so we're just going to look a little bit at some of those numbers. The Hess Village numbers in particular, as I mentioned, we are seeing a reduction in some of the crime types in Hess Village, but unfortunately the violent crime itself is the same as it was before. In addition to action deployment around crime prevention and violent crimes, we found a lot of utility and use for the unit in other areas of the service, and really the chief's objective was to increase the capacity of the service to respond to major incidents. So if you look at the screen in front of you, I'm not sure what page it is on the report, but you'll notice that in addition to regular patrol, the action unit will respond to community events, sporting events, canvassing for major crimes, and if you've ever had occasion to speak to our homicide investigators, they will attest to the value that having a team of 6 to 8 people to throw at a homicide within the first few hours, the value there. And then most recently, a trend that we've been dealing with is protests, and there's about 16% of the other activities action engages in is in relation to protests. So looking at the mounted patrol unit, we're at 263 BIA visits for 2013. It was an initiative that the inspector brought in at the beginning of 2013 just to ensure that the unit was seeing application across the city. So we really increased our presence there. I already spoke in terms of some of the functions of the mounted unit. But in addition to that, I'm going to forward one more screen and then go back. In addition to that, you'll see the other utility types for the mounted unit. So again, looking at some of our BIA visits, entertainment district, all these things, you'll notice that the vast majority of the deployment types that we use mounted for is operationally based. So 45% in relation to entertainment districts, and that is in particular Hess Village. I'll go back one screen, and I'm going to show you a short clip. This happened just last Friday evening. There was a disturbance in Hess Village, and what I want to bring to your attention is 3 points in terms of the value of that unit working together with the paid duty officers and the action officers in Hess Village. There's 3 points to look at: rapid dispersal in terms of disturbances that may escalate into higher violence, officer safety, so the officers that are responding to the incident, how we can improve their safety, and then thirdly, the prevention value, resulting in community quality of life. So I'll just click on this for a moment. So this thing's a little bit touchy here. I won't do that again. So what you'll notice is a disturbance happening on the right side of the screen, and you'll notice some individuals that are climbing the fences and attempting to re-enter a premise, one of the bars that they have been barred from, that they've been trespassed from. And so this is starting to escalate into what could be a large-scale disturbance. You'll notice on the left side of the screen, 2 officers, action officers responding to assist and determine how they can prevent this. And you'll see the mounted officers coming in and using what we call a side pass. The horse moves sideways to move people out of the way to make it safe for the action officers to come in and deal with the actual criminal offense that transpired. So the 3 things that we look at: rapid dispersal, officer safety, and prevention value. And so this is an example just as recent as this weekend in terms of how we can return the disturbance within a community and improve the total community quality of life. So what you'll notice now is that the officers have the crowd itself move back off the roadway. The officers can now move and effect their arrest and do so safely without having to be worried about getting jumped from behind or targeted further. And I'm going to hand this piece of the presentation over to Inspector Roston. I'll do this.
It's now my pleasure to give you an update on the Social Navigator program and the Bail Compliance program. The Social Navigator program started 2 years ago and was funded by a grant from Downtown Economic Renewal. And the goal of the purpose was action officers continuously ran into repeat offenders or people that were at risk of becoming involved in illegal drug activity or becoming a criminal. We found out through, we were doing arrests and they were going into jail. They were then being released back out onto the street, being arrested again, and we wanted to break the cycle of relying on the criminal justice system because obviously the criminal justice system was not the best suited to deal with these individuals. A lot of people had social services, but the connection had been lost over the years, leading them to interacting with the police in a negative fashion. We had a Social Navigator program then. The action officers identify individuals, and our Social Navigator, the paramedics came through, provided an officer, Pat O'Neill, who then would actually contact the person who was referred, find out what the root causes of the person's issues were, whether it was addictions, if it was homelessness, whether it was housing, whether it was financial. Then make the connection to the right social service agency, and hopefully then trying to reduce the contact with police. We classify somebody as being successfully navigated if somebody was looking after the primary care for them and there was a reduction in negative police contact. Marty, click. As you can see, these are for the people who we have navigated, this is the percentage of the different types of navigations that were done: mental health, income support, housing, withdrawal management, employment counseling. A lot of it was just actually hooking people up with a family doctor to get their medications and all that put on a proper balance, and other services. In 2013, we had 91 people referred to the Social Navigator program. Of those, 78 people were connected. Of those, 88% of the people that we connected to services, we found in the short term there was a change in negative police contact, and they were keeping them out of the judicial system. We then did a survey of 6 months, people who were in the program for more than, or out of the program for more than 6 months, and we discovered that 70% of the people maintained a lower police contact. However, we also discovered that 30% had actually increased police contact, which shows us that the program worked on a short-term basis for some people, but we needed to stay and monitor. We actually worked with the Wesley Urban Ministries, and we applied for a grant under the Proceeds of Crime, and we actually now have a person employed with us who actually will monitor the people who have left the program to make sure that when we start seeing a trend that they're starting to have negative police contact, they get them quickly back into the program. Because of the success of the program, we actually won the International Chiefs of Police Award for the Best Community Program. And we got this because it wasn't a police program, it was a combination of the City of Hamilton working with us, the paramedics working with us, and the police. And plus the judicial system working together. That was a criteria that got the award, and we're proud to say the city that came in second was Hong Kong. The bail compliance program was, we started 2 years ago also, and we have 2 officers that what they do is they monitor people who have been released from court with conditions for serious offenses. And there's a list of the offenses that we have there. We determined that after a year, after 2 years, we have the officers that we, or the offenders that we monitor have a 90% compliance rate. That means they did not breach their conditions or commit other offenses. When we thought, okay, is this a good number or is this a bad number? To actually show if we did a comparison to, you want to click, Marty? We did a comparison with the cases. They monitor, there was a total of about 30 cases a year of offenders that they would have monitored but were out of town. So they would have reached the criteria, so they'd make the same offenses. And we determined that, the ones that we were monitoring, had a 90% compliance rate. The offenders that were out of town had a 72% compliance rate. And what makes it interesting, we looked at it, we had most of our charges are failed to comply. They breached a curfew, they may have had conditions with alcohol, and they're through that. But the ones that we were not monitoring, actually, most of the charges were new offenses. So they went out and committed a break and enter or committed a robbery or something. It just wasn't breaching their court conditions. We actually did a survey. We randomly phoned people up, and this is quite usual. We don't normally survey the accused people. And we asked them, did the compliance checks really help you stay in compliance? And the majority of them said yes, they really did. But the sureties actually gave us a very strong report, said, yeah, your compliance checks really helped make my job easier by keeping the accused in compliance. We're talking about meaningful work for our volunteers. This kind of fits into what Sergeant Munger was talking about. Last year, we have actually auxiliary officers that are trained to go out with action. They have their bike trained, they work with the teams, and they did over 4,000 hours of patrolling. This is 4,000 hours of increased police visibility working with our action team. They spent over 800 hours monitoring our CCTV cameras last year. Once again, we also try to do our best. When there's government grants that are available, we try. The PAVIS was responsible for actually funding the action strategy. The Proceeds of Crime grant was actually the one that we worked with the Wesley Urban Ministries to enhance the Social Navigator program. The Provincial Civities Remedies grant was the one that we used to then enhance the CCTV cameras by allowing us to have a mobile camera. We also formed a partnership with the Ancaster Agricultural Society to move the stables, the horses up into the Ancaster stables here, which has been a great benefit for the horses. We continue to work with the City of Hamilton. The goal of the City of Hamilton is to help create economic development for the downtown area and for the rest of the city, leading to the International Economic Development Council saying Hamilton for the last 2 years is the best place to invest in Canada. That's not because of the action strategy. We're only a part of a team that is working towards the regeneration of Hamilton. So, in conclusion, there's a lot that is being done. We said crime stats continue to go down, CCTV and Social Navigator and the bail compliance continue to be enhanced. We're always looking for funding partnerships to make the program work. But overall, it was a very successful year for the action strategy in 2013.
Thanks, Scott. I have a couple of questioners, but first, Marty, did I actually see a guy at Hess Village try to push the horse out of the way? 2,000-pound horse? Well, the horse got angry. I saw he eyeballed him afterwards, and the guy backed right off in the picture. That was interesting to see. Councillor Whitehead, you're first.
And thank you very much for the excellent presentation. I was just going and asked Lois on the action how many reports that we had, and I pulled up 4 reports in 1 year. So clearly, you're proud of the work they do, and we're all proud of it. We get pretty regular updates on the successes. A couple of questions. You didn't mention the interaction in Hess Village, for example, with you sort of touched on it, but you didn't in a comprehensive way. Currently, we have a policy, and police services determine, I think that you determine, or there's a number of paid duty at Hess Village, which is being paid for by the restaurateurs and bar owners in that location. So that's supplementary to the action team and the regular beat officers and the mounted unit and whatever other units you may have. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So when I look at the data and Hess Village, for example, which is showing, on the violence side is still going up, I'm trying to understand the benefit of the additional 10 officers paid duty and what role they have in the context of addressing those issues in the Hess Village area.
Okay. The 10 officers actually work there on Hess Village during the weekends. Right. As you can see by the example that we said, the disturbances that create happen very quickly. We actually said we're maintaining violent crime has not actually gone down in the Hess Village, and that's while we have the 10 officers there on a Friday and Saturday night. I could only hazard to guess what would happen if those officers weren't there.
Okay, so we take that premise. Can you tell me how many charges the paid duty officers have laid in the last year in Hess Village?
Actually, I don't have that stat in front of me right now.
And Councillor, I just caution you, I think this is before there's a court case on this, so we got to be careful not to tread into that argument that's going to be made in front of the courts.
Yeah, no,
just take your questions carefully.
I understand that. That court case is based on who should be paying for the service.
Correct.
All I'm getting into is the role that the 10 officers synergistically work with in the action strategy. And I'm trying to understand exactly how many arrests, quite frankly, or charges have been laid by the 10 paid duty officers that have been there for the last year.
The action strategy, technically, the way the officers are deployed, the action officers are actually outside of the Hess Village itself during the evening. They're patrolling the parking lots in the neighborhood. The action officers actually come in right at closing time to assist with the clearing of the streets and moving the crowds. The mounted unit is actually deployed inside of Hess Village during the whole shift. So the number of arrests, that doesn't come to the action strategy. That is actually run through the special duties and Division 1. So I can't give you that number exactly right now.
I requested it formally through this board, so I certainly look forward to seeing it. But I think I'm more interested in, because we talk about strategy and seamless activity and so forth. So I think that the 10 additional paid duty officers in Hess Village would be tied into that tactical strategy dealing with these issues at Hess Village. Would I be wrong in saying that?
Yes, it's part of the whole strategy to address
how that's done. You mentioned 3 areas that, for the purpose of this presentation, that was being focused on: Concession Street, downtown, and I think you gave another one.
Question.
What would be the 4th, if there was a 4th?
That seems to be right now the priority is those 3 areas. The 4th is just outside the downtown and closer to King Street East area.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking that is because I know that we've had a couple of murders, drugs, assaults in the Southern Bonington neighborhood, adjacent to Mall College, a frame between Fennel, Upper James, West 5th. It shows up on your map. I'm wondering where that is relative to these issues.
Where the action strategy works quite well is that crime managers monitor their areas. When they see a spike in violent crime in the area, they then request that the action strategy comes in. The action strategy then works in conjunction with the crime managers and the patrol officers, where offenders are identified, times are identified. So it's just not bringing the action strategy in. It's a concentrated effort, a strategic effort, where we use intelligence-led policing to target our efforts more directly to where they need to be. As we said with the East End McCusson neighborhood and with concession, we work very close with the patrol officers out there. They set up the POP projects out there. Action is given direction. This is where we need you to be at these times. We need you to look at these offenders. We need these people monitored. So it is a partnership between the divisions. The action strategy, I almost say, is a lot of assists. We help out a lot. So when areas are identified, we go in there.
I appreciate that clarification. Question I'm going to ask on the mounted unit. You described a day in the mounted unit. There's five officers?
There's five, yes, there is.
One sergeant?
And one sergeant. No, 4 officers and 1 sergeant.
4 officers and 1 sergeant. There's no supplementary to the unit if somebody gets sick, and you still have, you have 4 horses?
We do have 2 spares that presently work out of the action deployment.
So they're replaced by, from the action, the 40?
Yes.
From that group? Okay. And I guess we've got some efficiencies with the new location that we've located the horses?
Yes, it's actually helped us reduce our travel time by 3 or 4%. We also now have a barn manager that's assisting in reducing the amount of time that our sergeant is actually tied up, so freeing the sergeant to get on the road more.
Great. How many hours are the horses deployed?
We deploy 2 horses on day shifts from Tuesday to Friday. And then we deploy 2 horses for evening on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday nights.
Okay. And how many hours would the unit work?
8 shifts a week, so they're 10-hour shifts.
In a day, how long would a shift be?
10-hour shifts.
10-hour shifts? Okay, and if I was to time the length of time to prep the horses, get them in the trailer, get them to the location, take them out, and then the whole thing again, bring them up, out of that 10-hour day, how long would that take?
We run our patrol time at over between 50 and 60% right now. Cutting down the travel, and that's including the travel, reduces that. We are also now in the process of enhancing our volunteer program. Right now we have 12 volunteers that we've trained this year. We have another 4 or 5 that we're training, and the volunteers will be coming in and doing some of the prep work that you've talked about that officers right now are doing. Our goal is to actually reduce the time that the officers have to do the grooming of the horse. We want to get the horses groomed prior to. Our volunteers do a lot of work right now at cleaning the tack, which the officers don't have to do, cleaning the trucks, which our officers don't have to do, mucking the stalls. Right, we're slowly but surely getting our officers out there, reducing the time they have to be in the barn, which is our goal, and getting them more and more in the street.
I appreciate that, but again, all due respect, the question I asked was, out of a 10-hour day, how many hours of that 10-hour day is being utilized in transporting, grooming, and all those other things you identified?
4 hours.
4 hours. So the officers during deployment are out for 6, and the balance is prep work, correct? Yes. And it's my understanding that there's been 35 arrests over a year for these 5 officers?
Yes.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and to either Scott or Marty. The number of officers that we have in the action, as part of the action strategy, I thought I heard was 40.
That's correct, yes.
So how do they, how is their time then split between the focus areas or the hot spots that you identified as part of the report? How would you differentiate between who's downtown at what time and who's in McQuestion or Concession?
I can speak to that, and I do believe we have charts that allocate exactly how many hours they spent by division, as well as the various duties that we spoke to. In terms of determining where they go, it's very much a week-by-week decision. But generally speaking, the staff sergeant will decide where the officer is going to be deployed, and what they'll look at is what are the crime trends happening. So we have our own analysts, we have divisional analysts, and then we have the corporate data that's available in terms of analysis. We look at the big picture, and we know, for instance, that during the daytime, we're probably always going to want a team downtown Hamilton. But in the evenings, that dynamic changes a little bit. There's less people right downtown, more going on in the entertainment districts, et cetera, and then we'll tailor our responses accordingly. So it very much is a week-to-week decision, depending on what's going on. And then also time of year makes a difference. So one of the points earlier about where the hotspots are located, some of that is in reference to time of year. So you'll see a hotspot around McMaster University. That will typically be at the beginning of the school season and at the end. But for the rest, you won't see much deployment there. There's really no need for it. So we allow the staff sergeant to make those decisions.
Thanks for that. And I assume the areas that were the original hotspots were developed in 2010 when the program was established. Is that correct?
2009 originally, yes.
2009,
That's
sorry.
correct.
So for most people, and I'm not certain I would agree with Councillor Whitehead in terms of highlighting the West Mountain as a hotspot in the community, but for most people that I've talked to who are a fan of certainly the action team and everything that they do, especially in the core, they're very visible. Most people wonder why Barton Street isn't on that list. And if for anyone who lives in the community to drive down Barton Street at certain times of the day, crime is visible from your car. And so I'm wondering, we noticed a pretty good series in The Spectator in terms of the challenges that Barton Street is facing. We know that the neighborhood groups there and the businesses are trying their best. So when I look at the list, the current list, I wonder how, is that part of the business planning process we go through to determine then on an annual basis whether the original hotspots are still valid, or are they sort of set in stone? I know the team is making its way around the city. I know when we had the sexual assaults on Quigley Road there for a little bit, I did notice the yellow jackets on the bikes and the mounted unit was there, and I'm certain we had, other resources that were allocated to that area when we're in sort of a crisis period, if you want to call it that. But I look at Barton Street and I think there's probably no better area to designate or apply the team to, or a portion of the team's resources, than to that area that has all kinds of challenges. So through you, Mr. Chairman, to either one of the presenters, your comments on Barton Street and whether that's a future candidate for part of this plan, if it's continued receiver support over the next several years, is Barton Street a candidate for those resources?
I have some comments, but I think the chief has some comments first.
I think the chief wants to make a comment.
We're currently in the process right now to start this project back in late 2009, early 2010. We conducted the workload analysis and we did the violent crime analysis, all categories right across the entire city. We targeted the specific areas for deployment. That work is getting redone right now. Corporate planning is working on that right now, which will be ready for the presentation to the board shortly in the future. And that'll give us the opportunity to then reevaluate those spots that change consistently. Mm-hmm. But as the staff indicated, the ability of the team and the strategy to be flexible at any time is what is key to success in depressing emerging crime trends. But we will look and reevaluate based on the workload analysis, the distribution of all those categories of crime. We will look for emerging areas. We're not seeing them according to the metrics that we've put in place now, but we'll be alert to them as that research comes forward.
And just to off of what the chief was saying there, we did in fact add one quadrant in 2012, and that was what we call our F quadrant that goes from Wentworth Street to Sanford, Cannon Street to Barton. And so the chief talks about flexibility, and we have done that.
The Barton Street area, sorry to interrupt, the Barton Street area does have a permanent beat officer assigned to it as well, same as James Street.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks for that information. The next question I have is around the funding for it, and I noticed that from the start it's it's received grant monies to support the program, not just for the officers that are part of the program, but it sounds like to supplement the resources that are needed for the areas in which they would have come from originally. So I'm assuming for officers taken from different parts of the service, now they're concentrated in certain geographic areas, and resources would need to backfill wherever they've come from and whatever services that they provided. To what extent is the program then, to what extent is it in jeopardy maybe at some point in time because it has funding that relies on a grants process? That's the question I should ask. How does that work over the long term, knowing it's not built into the budget?
So the, Chair, through you, the funding for the project is about 10%. We run about a $4.5 million project per year. It is something that we are committed to continue to run. If the grant funding was to go away, I don't believe that we would be shutting down this strategy because of its overwhelming proven success, and particularly in working with our community partners on sustainable programs to help those that suffer drug and alcohol addiction, mental health issues that we're dealing with constantly. All of the research is abundantly clear in policing that is where we get the most value for dollar invested. At this point, we would be arguing to continue this program. If that funding went away, there may be some adjustments to it, but we would still remain absolutely committed to the program.
Okay, I think those are the only questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member DiGregorio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, just a couple of questions with regards to Hess Street first. What are the real serious crime times at Hess Street?
Typically, the bulk of the disturbances that we see happen at closing. So when everybody exits the establishments, there's a large number of people that will congregate in a certain area, right out in front of the bars and on the streets, and that's when we see the problems. People have, of course, been partaking all evening, and then they come out, and that's typically when we see our problems.
Is this Monday to Sunday or specifically on the weekends?
I'm sorry?
Is this Monday to Sunday or specifically on the weekends?
Specifically on the weekends. However, the caveat to that would be come summertime, there's certain days during the week that they may have a feature going on, whether it be Thursday or Wednesday nights. There, a particular club may have a particular promotion going on, and then we'll see an influx of individuals coming in. And a lot of them come in from out of town as well. We're not always dealing with locals.
With regards to the paid offices at Hess Street, is this something that the businesses are committed to? I mean, could they tomorrow say, I'm not interested in paid offices at Hess Street? Is this a choice they have?
At this point, I'm not entirely sure of the structure that's in place around the special duty officers. I know that it's an ongoing topic of discussion between Division 1 Command and the merchants and the councillors as well. Perhaps the chief could speak to it a little bit more.
Well, I chair the licensing committee. I can tell you it's a condition of licensing for the area that they participate in this program for paid duty. And the number was arrived at in conjunction with the chief of the day. I don't know, the current chief is obviously overseeing the actual number. I think it's locked into the condition. And so it's part of the program. If you want to operate there, then you're going to have to pay the bill.
Okay, so that's the choice then, because of undoubtedly the issues that happen there, I assume. Okay. So with regards to the horses, you've talked about 3 or 4 hours getting them ready to get on the streets. I can only assume that there have been many situations where they have worked much faster than officers on foot. Am I correct there?
In terms of response times?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So with regards to the report, I have to tell you that as someone who has sat on this board for 8 years, it is a real great report, because when we have our business plans with members of the community around the table, their prime concern is safety in this city. And these reports undoubtedly are a clear indicator of the fact that because of the great work that you folks do, violent crime is down in this city. And we need to celebrate that. So thank you.
Yeah, not only is it down in the city, it's down the largest reduction in the country. And I'll just come to you in a second, Madeline. Just one quick question. Well, first of all, congratulations on the report. 50%, almost 50% reduction in violent crimes in the 3 areas. I guess the only storm cloud is that significant spike at Hess Village, and I assume you're going to get your head around that and try to reverse that back again because you're back to the 09 levels. But one observation I've had is that when Action first formed, there was a lot of people hanging around Summers Lane sitting down there and putting their hats out, and that's where a lot of our guests from outside the city come to go to the art gallery, the convention center, or Hamilton Place. And I noticed a couple of years ago you used to move them along, and you don't seem to do that now. Is there any particular reason why?
We did meet with, at that time, management within HECFI, and we did have a lot of conversations around being available. Most of that is in relation to other calls for service and where other demands are. But I know as recently as last year, when I was still in the Action office, we did receive a regular copy from the city in terms of ongoing events, both at Cops Coliseum, Hamilton Place, etc. And we would advise our officers what was going on, and we would in fact go there to ensure. Typically, the problem there is panhandling, and they know that that's where the money's coming in, and that's where they'll target.
Yeah, panhandling or urinating on the street, and maybe I should turn the chair over to Deputy Chair Levy here because I'm making some comments now. But it's unnerving. People at the art gallery come and go all day, every day, and there seems to be a stronger presence there. I walk that quite a bit because we have our Public Works Department over in Jackson Square, and you'll go over there to go to the market and so on. There just seems to be an increase in the number of people that hang out there and intimidate people when they come through. So there's nothing changed in law that you can still move them on. It's just that you haven't seen, you maybe haven't given the attention because you wait for HECFI to tell you when the big events are on.
We have to always remember that being homeless is not against the law, and panhandling is not against the law. Aggressive panhandling is. Some of you look at the environment of the location you talk about, it is also protected. So it does become a location by choice. We monitor them very closely. When we do get aggressive panhandling, we do lay the appropriate charges. But also, we also try to refer the panhandlers to the Social Navigator program also. Right? And try to use that avenue to try to get at the root cause of what the panhandling is, what's causing it, as opposed to just trying to move the person along. Once again, if we do move somebody along, somebody else will take that location because it is a prime location. So you've got to be careful that you're just not trying to move the problem as opposed to we're trying to address the problem.
Okay, because the city did invest significantly in the art gallery, as did the community through donations to refurbish it. And there's a lot more people coming through the turnstiles at the art gallery all day long. And so I just ask you to just take a look at that again. I used to see your officers on bicycles come up and just talk to them. And you know, they're getting a little aggressive, as you say. I've had some people complain to me that they see them urinating on the street, which is pretty uncomfortable to watch that for people. And so if you just give that some attention again, I'd appreciate that. With that, I'll take the chair back and turn over to Member Levy. You had some questions?
I have a question on the report about the quantitative results around Action firearms seized. I see there's, a variance in 2010, 1, and then it was a spike, 2011, 110, 2012, 48, 2013, 6. Any?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I can speak to that. You'll notice the large number, as you referenced, 110 firearms in 2011. That was directly related to the long gun registry, and at that time there were regulations in place. We were aware of who had registrations and who did not, and so we could very easily follow up and do compliance checks on those individuals that had allowed their licensing to lapse, and then we would have a conversation with them, and typically we would seize those firearms. In a lot of cases, the reason they allowed their licensing to lapse is because the actual lawful registrant had passed away, or they no longer had interest in having those firearms. So that's why those numbers are so inordinately high, whereas the ones that you're seeing since that time are more crime-related offenses.
Having sat through the the diligent work we did around the business plan with the community. I'm really impressed with the report, seeing the changes that, I'm really impressed with the surveys you do around the bail compliance and following up. I think same thing with Social Navigator and all of those. When you follow up with people, I see the grant being in place, that there is a more opportunity for success, which is seen in the report, as well as seeing the shrinking crime, which I think Debbie did last year, and Rita showing us how it shrank. I'm looking forward to 2015 and seeing how we can shrink that even more, deploying the effectiveness of the action strategy in reducing that crime as well. So in terms of the horses, if I look back at what happened around the G20, the only unit, absolutely the only unit that did not have a complaint, again, it was the mounted unit. Seeing from that video, you can see the fact that when there is an altercation, it is de-escalated much more swiftly by the horses, and no injury to the public as well as to the officers as well. So I'm a big fan. I hear that from so many people across the city. The work of the mounted unit. So I'm still a big fan of the mounted unit, and look forward to its presence at the Pan Am Games, which will really test security for the city to make sure that they run smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Whitehead for a second time.
I forgot the breakdown on the quantitative. This is page 41 of the report, or page 4, sorry, of the report. And so when I see PONs, is that provincial offenses? The N stands for?
Provincial
Offense notice.
Notice, okay. So is that traffic violations contained in there as well?
Yes.
So if I want to break down geographically the units and how many tickets are issued from a traffic perspective. So for example, how many POAs, or I used to call them POAs, how many provincial offenses, traffic offenses, acts were given out in the downtown area specifically that 82% of the time our action team is deployed? Could I get that breakdown to understand how that stacks up with the balance of the city?
Are you asking for the stats on the action officers giving out the provincial offenses, or the?
Because my understanding, the action team is there for visibility, there to deal with violent crime, to deal with those kinds of things. I also understand that it doesn't prevent them from doing all the other things within their responsibility. One of them, of course, is making sure that over and above the beat officers and the other deployments, to issue POAs to those individuals that are in violation of the Highway Traffic Act or any other violation. So I'm trying to understand, is there a spike, because this is over and above the deployment of the beat officers, is there a spike, and I don't see it here because it's blended with everything else, a spike in how many traffic-oriented issues and tickets that are issued as a result of the action team in this location?
Yes, I would say since the action officers have been deployed in the downtown, there would be an increase in enforcement. That's only natural because there's more eyes on the street to see the infractions. We do a breakdown of the offense notices issued every month. I could actually provide that to you. Some of them done for traffic, some are done for Safe Streets Act violations, some are done, for bicycles on the street, on the sidewalk. So there's a wide variety of offenses that they.
Yeah, I'm just curious on all things being equal. You have this additional group that are deployed based on need, which you have identified in 3 areas. One of the things they do is issue POAs. We know that they spend a lot of time giving traffic tickets out. So I'd be kind of curious to see how many traffic tickets are given out by the action team alone. So separate from the balance of the activity.
Yeah, maybe you could take that offline with them then.
They're right here
Sure.
in the report. That's
Yeah, total number last year was.
Page 4.
But my understanding, when I asked the question, so the 4,970 was PONs, which represent not just traffic issues. Is that correct? Or is that just traffic?
That could be traffic. It could be urinating in public. It's Safe Streets Act. Aggressive panhandling would be in there. There's a variety of different offenses. They're all provincial offense notices.
So that's what I'm looking for to break out. And at least I don't see it there unless Chief has it
But you're
available.
looking at traffic violations?
Correct.
I could actually provide that for you.
Maybe you could take that offline with
Thank
Councillor
you.
Whitehead. That. Okay, time's moving on, so I think we need to wrap up these presentations. I see no more speakers. And Chief, any wrap-up comments?
Thank you very much, Chair. The board has, over the last number of meetings, received some 5 annual reports of the service and today's presentations. And I want to take a moment to recognize the effort of our research and planning staff, our officers, our civilians that carry out these strategies. What you have clearly seen depicted over the last number of months, and particularly today with this report, is the action strategy was developed in 2010, Social Navigator created to address the issues much around the social determinants of crime. The bail compliance team was created to supplement the strategy. We have worked as well on administrative issues like the case preparations unit to save time on paperwork. We've established the new St. Joe's protocol for the transference of responsibility at the hospitals to save our officers time. We have put in place now the rapid response team as a part of the coast response. This is all a part of business process reengineering. We have utilized technology and implemented it successfully to save time and create efficiencies. We've built recruiting and development into our programs, and you have received also over the last couple of months several benefits realizations reports that address the issue of cost reductions, cost savings, or cost avoidance. And what we are focused on is sustainability in policing, sustainability in our community programs, and sustainability of our partnerships, all focused at reducing crime significantly in our city, and it has been abundantly proven to be occurring over the last 5 years.
And on behalf of the board, Chief, I'd like to thank you and all the service for the great reports that have come to us. I've certainly found them very informative, and we appreciate it. I know it took some time. I know you congratulated me last meeting of being the chair that had the longest meeting, but it's worth doing it. It's worth hearing it, and thanks also to Marty and Scott. I didn't get a chance to do that before you left the podium, but thanks for your presentations also. So we're going to move on now. Any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the consent agenda, and I will come back to 4.1 for approval on everything once we go down them. So we have 4.2. Any questions or comments? 4.3? Yes. Irene? No, I'm going to do them all at once at the end. We'll go down them all. Unless you have questions or comments on any of them, I'll go. Floor is yours. Yep.
I would just publicly like to recognize Superintendent Debbie Clark. Some of the board members were at the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement Awards Night, and our own Debbie Clark won the Leadership Award, and we should all be very proud of the excellent work that Debbie does for our police service. I know there was 2 other officers nominated. Chief, through you, Mr. Chair, Chief, do you want to add to my comments or about the other officers?
We had several submissions that were put forward to the committee for consideration. One of our homicide investigators for her work in homicide, and one of our officers for involving saving the life of a child in a crisis situation. So we were very proud as a board and as a service to be there that night to see the numerous recommendations for awards, but I would echo your comments as well and congratulate Superintendent Clark on winning the leadership. Great night for the service.
Well, congratulations, Debbie. It's great we get these awards coming. They just we start to take them second nature, the service getting awards. We're getting them constantly, but thank you, Irene, for pointing that out today. So we'll move on, 4.4. Any questions or comments? 4.5A. B. I have one question on B, just that on page 11, which is, I'm surprised to see such a significant spike in sexual assault on seniors and fraud over, I guess it's $5,000. It still remains relatively high at 22. I don't know who to put this question to, Chief, so I'll start with you, and you can deflect it to anybody you like. But, so we're seeing excessive abuse, I take it, from powers of attorney, are we? That seems to be a continuing increase. It's on page 11 is the chart I'm referring to.
And you've highlighted kind of two growth areas. The sexual assaults are often within an institution or a care facility. And we do run to, I think it's mentioned in the report, sometimes the people are suffering from dementia or other things that prohibit us basically from charging them with the offense in terms of forming intent. But we're getting increased reporting. And part of the reason for both growth is increased reporting and awareness, both publicly, but also what the nature is. And I know one of your questions, in addition, was earlier, what's the threshold for kind of that neglect? And that's an area that's growing as well. And once again, that's on the basis of awareness. Often the injuries will be hidden by clothing or otherwise, and unless the caregiver reports that or somebody else intervenes and sees the abuse, it's underreported. So in all three circumstances, and one of the difficulties with the victims here is they're often, because they're disadvantaged for a number of reasons, or embarrassment about the offense itself. So we're trying to get people beyond that embarrassment factor. And as you saw, highlighted the nature of the kind of offenses that are growing, including the grandma scheme, as they call it, where a supposed relative phones up, says they're incarcerated and they need money, and yet the person doesn't even know the victim. So it's really around awareness, increased reporting. Our seniors officers, as well as our Crimes Against Seniors unit, we have capacity to investigate those offenses. It is a growth industry. You can see by the demographics within the report, and will continue to grow. So the more awareness we get, the more reporting. It's kind of like child abuse in a sense. As that awareness grows, so do the offenses. But it doesn't necessarily indicate it's just a matter of increased reporting.
And deputies, you see in the report, there's been a significant spike in the aging population.
Yes.
Something that jumped off the page of me too is us men don't stand a chance, because of 8,975 people 85 years and older, 6,150 are female. They must live better than we do.
I wouldn't hazard a comment on that.
Okay.
Chair.
Councillor Collins.
I'm curious to know what the medium and long-term plans are to deal with seniors' issues. We know that number, I think Deputy Chief just mentioned, those numbers are going to continue to rise in terms of not just the population numbers, but we can obviously see the incident numbers are probably going to increase in all categories just as a matter of following the population spikes. So I'm wondering how the services for seniors then, through the service, our service, is how is that geared up or ramped up in certain areas? Where does that come from? And do we have a medium or a long-term plan to deal with sort of that bubble that will burst someday in terms of the resources that are required? And we're seeing it in other city services. Obviously, recreation is one of them. Homes for the Aged is another one. That could almost apply for almost every single service that we offer to individuals. I'm assuming the service, our service, will experience the same growth pains. How are we prepared to deal with that?
Deputy?
A couple of ways. Obviously, doing more with less. We have spread out that education both to our front line and elsewhere, but quite frankly, the issue is one around resources for investigations. They take quite a bit of time, whether it's fraud, and as you know, we have a number of fraud cases outstanding. We're not proud of that. That really is the capacity beyond the frontline response to do those detailed investigations. Because you're dealing with bank records, because of the nature of the people being disadvantaged in the first place, makes those investigations very difficult. You do have to speak to other witnesses. You have to get the paperwork. I know in speaking to our Crimes Against Seniors units, detective themselves, some cases may take literally months to compile. In terms of the distribution across the service for staffing, this really is an area that we need assistance with if we're looking at both the clearances, but also the investigations and time to do those investigations. Cut out here. It is time consuming. We do need resources there. If we shift from the front line, as you know, we have staffing minimums, which we're pretty much hovering around in terms of that distribution. So it really would require additional resources, and we can certainly prepare a business case towards that end to bring to the board. It does require additional investigators.
Yeah, and I understand the more with less concept, and that's certainly the first strategy to deal with those numbers. But as you mentioned, there will be a budget pressure at some point in time to deal with this part of the service. And I'm wondering if the board has received information in the past that seeks to inform them as to what that trend looks like. Does it peak in 220? Does it peak in 225? And then, what does it look like on an annual basis? Has the board received information to that extent in the past?
Probably not as detailed as this particular report, and I think really that's a byproduct of, as you note, the dates when the Crimes Against Seniors Unit was implemented and started to track these investigations. You can see from 2009, kind of the growth industry. We did have resource people dedicated to education at the divisional level who were senior support officers. The expansion was done with some increases around those investigators specifically for crimes against seniors. We're actually, believe it or not, at the forefront of much of this, but again, it's a question of quantity and how much you're going to dedicate to it. So to your point, this is really the first time you're seeing the blend of those demographics with the information from the city, the distribution, the number of seniors. We know what's happening in other industries as well, but yes, it's really much like we dealt with youth crime in the 90s. This is really the growth industry for crimes in future.
I'm wondering, Mr. Chairman, if we can ask for some kind of a report that seeks to understand what the budget looks like, the budget pressures over the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, it's a guess, but you have some statistics to work with to try to understand how it's trending and how significant those budget pressures will be. I don't know if you require a motion or just straight direction, Mr. Chairman. Whatever one you'd prefer, I'd be pleased to put.
This be a perfect time, wouldn't it, Deputy, to have a motion like that, to have a report back?
I'll leave that to your direction. Normally it's done through to the chief, but I can accept on his behalf with his consent.
Chief, is it okay if the board member places a motion now to ask for future budget pressures on related to seniors?
Strictly an information report.
Sure. Could you make your motion then, Councillor?
I would then, Mr. Chair. I'd move that a report back on services for seniors and the budget impacts that the service can expect to see over the next maybe 5 to 10 years. Again, it's a guess, but I would ask for whatever information they have to be presented to us so we have some understanding in terms of what
understand the budget pressures.
Absolutely.
Your seconder to that, Councillor Whitehead? Discussion on it? Said 5 to 10 years. When the report will be back, we'll leave that up to the chief when he can have the resources to put it together. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Opposed? That's carried. Walt, you had a comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I noticed that there is, I'm talking about 4.5B. Looking at
4.5B?
Yeah, yes, sir. 4.5B, yes. When I'm looking at the chief's memo here, I'm looking at 13 arrests, 33 criminal charges out of the 460 cases for investigation. Is there a way that we can find out what the convictions are on that? Or
We've had a lot of discussion around this table before regarding the conviction rates, and the amount of this service has in that. You will generally find that there will be a poor report on conviction rates because we are not in control of what the courts do with charges. We can charge an individual with 10 criminal offenses. Once that leaves the jurisdiction of the service and moves over to the Crown Attorney, they, for whatever reasons that they have within their structure, may in fact accept a plea to one count of one of those charges and deal with all the rest. That would show us with a conviction rate of 10%. It is not a good performance measure within policing because it's not in fact something that is within our control. So there's a number of factors that influence that, and we've had a lot of discussions before around that as a performance measure in policing, and it is not really an effective measurement. The clearance rate is a more effective measurement, which is reported in all of our StatsCan reports.
thank you.
Okay, Councillor Whitehead.
For clarification, when you're looking at 33 convictions or charges, it doesn't necessarily mean 33 different people, right? It could be the same person have 2 or 3 convictions. The other thing I was going to ask is, when you talk about performance, I mean, my understanding with the Crowns is, and what Chief said is absolutely accurate. And so it's a very hard thing to nail down, but it did raise a question in my mind on a couple of other cases. What is our quality control, performance control, or even report back from the Crown relative to the quality of evidence and information that our officers bring forward? Is there a measurement for that?
What we do is we meet every 2 to 3 months with the Crown Attorney for Hamilton and their staff. The command meet with them, and we go over those very issues, the nature of the information that is going forward, keeping in mind that right from the administrative process of preparing a Crown package and moving forward, there is a checklist that is built within the system of all of the documents, all of the paperwork that must accompany. We have supervisory review at 2 levels. We have a centralized case prep unit that is making sure that we comply with those procedures. And the feedback from the courts to date after the implementation of the case prep unit has been that they have seen a significant increase in the quality of the paperwork going over. And that relieves the administrative burden from our officers, and I've reported back to this board many times. We've reduced the administrative time on average for each individual case from 4 hours and 17 minutes to 1 hour and 4 minutes, recouping about 3 hours of patrol time for our frontline officers. So the quality of information going over, the feedback from the Crown attorneys, very positive in terms of the evidence being presented to support the cases.
And Mr. Chair, the reason I mentioned is there was a break-in in my ward. The individual was arrested, found with the smoking gun, the stolen articles, and gloves and so forth. Went to the courts, and because there's reasonable doubt, he got off. And he was a person that just came out of jail and had a record. And one of the things that the evidence that wasn't produced was the fact that to place him at the scene, at the crime scene, was any evidence of glass or broken glass. And that one piece of evidence was missing to convict this individual. So that's why I raised this. What is our...
But you're getting to specific areas of operations now.
Well, it's not, all I'm looking for is how do we measure the quality of investigation to ensure that not only are we learning from it, but we're improving on it. I've never had that the whole time I've been here, and how the chief addresses those issues.
I'll reiterate that we have the procedures in place that direct our officers' ability to investigate in every type of criminal offense which they follow. They are then reviewed by supervisors at 2 levels, the sergeant's level and then the staff sergeant's level. They are forwarded through the case prep unit where we look for all of the factors in issue to prove in a case, and then we forward them. I am very satisfied with the quality assurance process in place. Feedback that we're getting from the courts has been excellent in terms of the nature and quality of the investigations and the evidence.
Okay, so we have a process in place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I see no more people wanting to be recognized on 4.5B, so I'll move on to C. Here? Yes, Chief?
If I could just mention, bring to the board's attention in C, one of the original business statements around the development of the multi-agency training facility was to save costs within the service, and it was a tripartite agreement between the city, the province, and the federal government.
Part of the infrastructure stimulus program.
To build that, so all 3 levels of government came together to join in a strong partnership and build that facility. And what we're seeing now is the benefits to us in the service, payoffs in cost savings, particularly to train our people, and the money that it would cost to send them outside of our own service to train them, and savings of in some areas $158,000, and the ability to train our people over the last 2 years, saving almost $300,000. So again, the benefits realized from the original business case are reported here to the board.
Thank you. It's gone to 4.5D. E, F, G. That's right.
I just want to make a comment and compliment the services.
Which item?
it's doing ride programs. That would be E.
Okay?
I know that the officers were doing the Scarborough crossings, I believe it was last Wednesday after council, and it wasn't, there was a number of us that came across it. They're doing great work, and again, I want to thank the services for the great performance.
I've got caught, or not caught, I've been stopped by the ride program coming out of council meetings a couple times in the last 8 years, so it's out on Aberdeen Avenue. Although I guess I shouldn't give away location, should I? Okay, I told him I was drunk on too much business being done. So we've done F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, and N. And there's also a walk-on item O, which is the letter from Durham Regional Police. And because it's being live streamed, this has to do with the suspension without pay. And it says that it's meeting of May 12, 2014, the Durham Regional Police Service Board endorsed the resolution proposed by Hamilton. So this is really getting traction out there. And big week coming up next week with the Ontario Police Services Board. This week, yes. There is our resolution, I believe. Nancy goes to the board, goes to the executive on Thursday, does it? Yeah. I know the chief is speaking on Friday. Okay, so I need to go back to a motion then, which is item 4.1, which is a motion to approve all the consent items. Moved by Nancy, seconded by Walt. Discussion on them? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So now we'll move on to .4.
Point 4. That was the board members attending the Canadian Association of Police Governance Annual Conference.
Yes.
I think that was approved, but did we put a number on that, or is that just open to all members?
I interpret it as meaning anybody who wants to go is free to attend.
Thank you.
So I get challenged on that. Okay, 5.1, which is a request from Norm Dorr to provide a deputation to the board. This is our first experience of this. This has to do with lapel cameras. This is the one that, unfortunately, I declined last time because we'd already had a presentation from Mr. Dorr on lapel cameras. And just before we open it up, Chief, is there anything further that we can expect back from the service related to lapel cameras? I know that other services are piloting them. Should we expect to get something back from you or at a future date on this issue?
At this point, we've had some preliminary research done. Staff Sergeant Mike Worcester authored a report for us, as I've spoken publicly before. We will not be advancing a business case in this area until we have direction from this board that it will be funded and staffed. We do not have the staff to absorb this right now. However, we continue to look at, I've just received some reports from Edmonton, and I've been in touch personally with Calgary. And we have just received a report from the York Regional Police that looks to the issue of the establishment of a video services unit, properly staffing the issues of disclosure, data download, the development in the IT world of the divisional parking lot that is required for the transfer of the technology from the cameras through the lapel cameras or through the cars and into the service system. There is a lot of work to be done in assessing the disclosure issues and a lot of policy work.
Privacy issues.
Privacy issues, when on and when off. That work is coming through the pilots. But at this point, we do not have an intention to bring forward a business case for that until we receive direction from the board regarding staffing and funding availability to support that.
But it's difficult for the board to give you direction until we have a rough idea what this is going to cost and what the staffing levels are and what the privacy issues are and what the experiences are in other jurisdictions.
Right now, the programs that we've looked at are in excess of $2 million for significant size services.
Okay, and when will we see something across the country on all the issues, whether other services are going to continue, like York or like Edmonton? Because privacy's got to be a big issue when you walk into somebody's home with a camera on.
Privacy is a very significant issue, and it's privacy related to the different people that we interact with, sometimes with victims, sometimes with witnesses, sometimes with accused, and then, of course, the location where they are. Are they in a public domain or are they in a private residence? All of those things are being built into the policies where the pilots are undertaking now. We're going to let other services do that work, and then we'll piggyback that work later.
Okay, so I'm back to the board now. What do you want to do on this issue?
So I just wanted to add one more thing about that. So Edmonton received a federal grant in addition to their funds to put the pilot together, and they were expected to deliver a white paper on this. It would be just preliminary findings, no commitment to this, but some of the work that I've done research on this is they're hoping to have one out by the end of the year about the lapel cameras. So I think we brought this up in January, I think around Edmonton's federal grant around these lapel cameras. So we're waiting to hear about all the bugs that they're trying to work out in that.
Thank you. Walt, did you have a question? Then Councillor Whitehead. Very first, okay.
It's just simply, I thought we had given direction to the police services to come back with a report on the feasibility of entering into a pilot program. If I'm mistaken, then maybe that's something we should at least consider. It wouldn't need a lot of work. It's just, again, to put in writing what we're hearing is that maybe it is not feasible, maybe it is more prudent for us to wait for the results in other areas. But in absence of an actual written report, it's all speculative at this point. So can I get clarification? Did we not ask for a feasibility?
Well, I think we already answered that question. The answer is no.
Did we had a report to come back, though, did we not, in regards to what was happening in Edmonton and other jurisdictions?
We spoke about it here,
That's
but
what it
there's
was.
been no reports.
Okay, fair enough. So I think maybe that's what we should, at the very least. I mean, at the end of the day, when you have a report in front of you, you have it in black and white, and have a better and clearer understanding that can be challenged by not just us, but the general public. Then I think we're better positioned to make an informed decision where we go from there.
Okay. And Walt, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Not only that, but since we don't have any information right now, it's wait until we had the facts.
So I'm hearing two things. One is that we not hear the deputation until we get the report back, so we have a benchmark to go from. And I'm hearing someone else say that we should put a resolution through asking for an update on lapel cameras from other jurisdictions. So I agree with you, Walt. I think it's difficult to hear a citizen come in and talk about lapel cameras without having the information from the staff and from the chief on this. So.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think it's premature to talk about the subject right now, with all due respect to the deputation.
Okay, let's chink these off one at a time then. So let's just, Walt, since we're at you, do you want to move a motion then that we not hear the deputation until such time as we get a report back from the chief?
Yes, I would like to do that. I'd like to postpone this deputation until the time that we do actually have the facts in front of us.
Is there a seconder to that? Second by Chad. Discussion on it. None? All in favor? Okay, you got discussion?
The only problem with that resolution is we have no direction that's been given, so
I'm coming back to you for motion after this.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
We're putting the cart before the horse.
I got to do them one at a time. Which one do you do first? So all in favor of Walt's motion then? Opposed? Carries unanimously. And so Terry, do you want to place a motion then to ask staff to report back to us?
Yeah, I'm asking staff to bring back an update on all the jurisdictions that currently are utilizing or piloting the lapel cameras. What are their findings to date, and the feasibility of the police services to enter into a pilot program at this point?
Okay, so an update from other services on what their findings are to date on lapel cameras. I think we need to know roughly what the staffing levels will be. We've heard it verbally, and what the cost would be.
Well, that'd be part of the feasibility, so.
Yeah. Seconder to that motion. Second by Walt. Discussion on it. Seeing none? All in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. I didn't see any opposed votes go up. Okay, let's move on now to 5.2A. So we just need a motion to receive this, Lois, in your view? Okay, Councillor Whitehead.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the discussion and the development of this report. As you can see, I don't know if you have the full report, it was a tie vote at the subcommittee meeting. The issue is whether or not the meeting should be, policy subcommittee meeting should be done in camera or in public. So at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair, I would like to address that issue. My position has always been there's nothing that prevents us. The legal advices suggest the same, that we should be doing it in public. So I would like to revisit that with the full board.
And this may be an appropriate time for the members of the board to bring up, this come up at agenda review. And so the question, my question, because it's tie voted, I think my vote's going to tip it then, one way or the other. And of course, I'm always open to be transparent as much as we can. But I wanted to make sure, I want to get a clear understanding of the Police Service Act and what it meant for the board and whether or not we can in fact go into closed session to do discussions on policy. So you see in your blotters tonight a legal opinion from Linda on this. And when it come back, the bigger question is the whole committee legal? Because it's got 6 members on it. So effectively, you got a majority of the board. So effectively, you're making decisions. Now, in this one particular case, you didn't. You tied. But she's very strongly suggesting in her legal opinion back to us that this should not be a subcommittee. It should be an advisory group. And that typically on police service boards, those groups are made up of 3 members. And I know we had a spirited discussion on this back when we first struck the committee. But being a police service board, I think we should operate within the law. And if I interpret her email to me, which is before you, that we should reduce the membership list to 3 so that you're not binding the board. I know at council, we're always very cautious and been warned by the clerk that no more than 8 of us can get together at one time without the clerk present because you're making decisions. And so I would throw it back to the board to suggest to you that is there any way that we can reduce this group to 3 because you're bringing recommendations back to the full board where it'll be discussed and we can have a good conversation about that. So I open that up to you. Nancy?
Mr. Chair, knowing the Police Services Act so well, I would like to resign from the committee. That way that, the committee will now be reduced down to 5 because, like you put it so well, we now have a committee of 6 who can make decisions for this board at what really is a subcommittee.
Okay, I have Madeline and Walt.
And I would like to as well, the same thing. I would I respectfully resign from that committee as well, so we're now down to 4.
Okay, Walt? Or as Walt and Chad, or Chad, do you want to go first?
Actually, I'd rather everybody finish speaking.
Okay, Chad?
Disagree. This says that usually, so it leaves it open that there could be 6. So
I think we should play with
I don't want to place great emphasis on the fact that this is violating any act. So you can have as many people in the subcommittee as you want.
However, we experience a council where 8 of us can't get together at one time.
Okay, but we have
because of that problem.
You're in the chair. I don't want to debate you. We had an administrator at the meeting who acts as the clerk, so there's no comparison there. But just in the spirit of if this is about making the committee smaller, I'd certainly be willing to remove my name. I think I was the last one added to that committee in my first meeting, so I'd be willing to insert my name as one of those who'd like to be taken on.
Okay, and so we're now down to 3. So thank you. I feel more comfortable that, and I agree with Chad that she says it may be, but I'd rather be clean about this, and the ultimate discussion and debate would happen here at the board where the final decision is made. Add Walt and Nancy.
Oh, sorry.
Walt?
And Mr. Chair, I agree we can have as many members as we want on a committee, but what we have to be cognizant is that with a committee of 6, we are making decisions for the board when really it is a subcommittee. So that was my reason for saying that I would step away in order for the subcommittee to function as a subcommittee, not as a board.
And when I read her report, it actually won't be called a subcommittee. It's an advisory committee now. It's advising the board. Madeline?
I felt the discussion around the table, was to get to the policy was very good, and, it would have been helpful for all of the voices to be there. However, for the functionality of the board in terms of three, as I said, that was the reason why I stepped away.
And I would like to read out the last sentence in the first paragraph, just for the people who are watching this on streaming. It says, a 6-member subcommittee is not advisable as it akin to having a full board meeting. Walt, do you still have a comment?
I think it worked out well. I was going to suggest one from the provincial appointees, one from council, and I would have been more than happy to stay on the board myself. So I think the end result turned out the same. So, but I would also appreciate if we actually had more than one opinion on things like this.
I would have got an opinion from Marco also, but he's had a
No, I'm
issue.
talking about we should actually retain other counsel to get more than one opinion.
Well, I think we've solved the problem now. I think we can move on and on this one. So, Lois, you've got the new committee now and the structure of it. And so I think we need a motion then on the new committee that it be Irene, Terry, and Walt. You want to move that, Terry? Or do you want to move that, Nancy? Seconder? Madeline, discussion on it? All in favor?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you. Terry, back to your motion.
Chair?
Yes.
I wonder if it's possible for the service to get a copy of the legal opinion in order to educate ourselves and help us along?
Okay. Terry, your motion.
Well, the committee was a tie vote on whether it should be, this committee should be camera or publicly. So it's in front of us now, Mr. Chair. So if you disagree with having in camera, you would have to vote against this particular motion, I would think. I'm going to look to Lois. And then once it fails, then you would put on that it would be public. Because the committee's position based on a tie is that the motion to be public fails.
Well, okay, except, and Lois, correct me if I'm wrong, I read the resolution that it failed at committee, therefore it's not a recommendation coming in here.
That's correct.
So I think you just need to make a motion that brings it back to the board. Am I correct in that,
So
Lois?
I'll bring it up from the minutes.
Okay, what's your motion?
To go public. The committee should meet in public forum.
Except we're prohibited under the Police Services Act for items
All
of
the prescribed
confidentiality.
reasons, correct.
Okay. Seconder to that? Walt, discussion on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries on a 4-3 vote. Okay, deputations to the board. I don't think this was tied. There's a recommendation that the board approve the amended policy, police services policy. I think you did a lot of work on this, and it made sense to me. So, are you chair of the committee,
Yes.
Terry? So you want to move it on behalf of the committee?
So moved.
Seconder? Second by Irene. Discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Progress now. Item 5.3 is the operating budget surplus deficit. And I believe, roadmap, I think we need a motion to approve this. Yep, we need a motion just to receive it. My roadmap says. So motion, Chad? Just moving that, second by Nancy. Discussion on it?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead, Chad.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And as is noted here, it states that we do not have a firm policy on how the reserves how the year-end variances are dealt with by both the city and the service. And so I would ask that maybe our staff here meet with the city's finance staff to come up with a policy that both organizations can live with. Seems like this one has worked relatively well without having a policy in place over the last number of years, but the fact we don't have one, I think, should be concerning, because there could be a situation where in future years we may have a very large positive variance, or the reverse. I think the chief had mentioned before, there could be years where we have a negative variance, and I think we need to be prepared for that, so that both sides understand, and when I say sides, both organizations clearly understand what happens in the event of a positive or negative variance. So I would just ask that we meet with the city's finance staff and come back with maybe some options and alternatives that both organizations could look at.
Hey, just before I think that probably need a motion to give direction to staff to do that. But Chief or John, any comments on it?
We follow along with the procedures of the city, which is every other department that we are aware of that comes forward, and they make the presentation to their governing body, and the decision is made. I'm not sure, other than what you're going to lay out, other than that in policy, is come to the governing body and let the governing body decide, which is what has come to this board for as long as we've been doing this. And then the board makes a decision on its funding, what it wants to do with it, if there is surplus or if there is deficit. I'm not sure that a policy can be much more in-depth than that, and it's exactly in line with what the city departments are doing.
John, anything to add to that?
It's some of the discussions we had with other services. It's been the decision of the board to resolution to decide on the surplus monies and how it's going to be allocated.
But to Chad's question, I mean, Chad, you could probably ask it better than I can. What happens if there's a shortfall, not a surplus?
And through you, Chair, we would go to the board and with a recommendation like we did in 2012 and come up with a funding. Basically, what would cause that deficit, as we did in 2012, was the excessive retirements. So we went to the payouts in the sick leave bank. We went to the sick leave reserve to pay for that deficit.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say the policy is pretty clear in your minds. And Collins?
Well, there is no policy. There seems to be, if I was to ask for the policy, which I did last meeting, there is no written policy in terms of how this works itself out at the end of the year. There's a practice that's in place, that's worked. There's no policy. So I would suggest if there's a reluctance to do it here, I can pursue it wearing my other hat and ask our finance staff to come up with something that the city can then forward to the board for their consideration. The question is, there will be years, and there have been years, where there are positive variances, and those monies have been left with the organization to deposit into a reserve that's used traditionally for capital purchases, as I understand it. This year was the first year that the HPS participated fully in the city's budget process, and so their capital projects were stacked up against other city projects, and the reserve, to an extent, wasn't used. So if I use the example, there was I think the bomb truck flowed through the city's capital budget process. It didn't flow through the reserve. So the past practice has been deposit positive variances into the capital account for HPS to use. In this instance, the money was deposited, but the bomb truck was funded through the city's capital budget process. So starting to deviate a little bit from the practice that's been in place without a policy. I'm wearing two hats here, so it's a little difficult. If there's a reluctance, I completely understand that. I can raise it at the city and deal with it another way. I just found it odd that we have something that seems to work, but I think we need to be prepared for years where there may be big spikes one way or the other. And in those years where there is a big spike and there's some controversy over who's keeping money or who's paying, it'd be good to have a policy in place.
Oh, good point. We got the forensic building coming up, which is a very expensive capital project too. So, John?
Excuse me, Chair. It's always been a practice to go to the city for some special projects like the bomb truck. We've gone for other projects in the past years, for other capital projects, which City Council has approved. However, in their resolutions, they've stated that that funding comes from the police capital reserves, for example, and that has taken place. This is not a new process. Of course, when we do go to the city for that funding, we are asking for funding from the city reserves and not the police reserves, but council has the opportunity to say yes or no and where that funding was going to come from. So I can contact the direction of the chief, the city finance, so we can come up with a policy. It's one of the best practices that the OACP talked about, is have a formal policy.
Do you want to put that in form of motion or direction? You putting that in motion? Seconded by Terry. You understand the motion? Do you understand it, Lois, that Sean and I guess Mike will get together, Mike Zagaric, and come up with a policy on year-end surpluses and on capital? Terry?
I think there was conditions to it when the uploading of the court cost, that the money had to stay in the police service, if I remember right, legislatively. So I can't really use that as an example, but in the event that federal or provincial grants came forward to offset current police services cost in mid-budget, those dollars would create, perhaps could, a significant variance, positive variance. The question is then, whose variance should it be? Should it go back to the city? Should it stay with the police services? And currently there is no policy to define when and how you would address those issues. I can tell you that if it's a significant amount of money that sits there, the city will be going, well, we want to let the taxpayers off the hook. So I would hope that the policy is developed in conjunction with our finance staff and with certainly the board to come up with a policy that makes sense on behalf of the taxpayers of the community.
Okay, so Chad's motion then is that to review the policies related to year-end surpluses or shortfalls in capital. So all in favor of that motion? Opposed? You know, opposed, so that motion carries. Just one other item of information. We run into significant scheduling conflict for the next board meeting on June the 16th. The school,
Sure.
Let me just finish this
Okay.
and I'll come back to you. The school board needs this building on that night, and they booked it literally, if not months ago, years ago. And so this should be hopefully the last time we have a conflict, because the school board, and I don't know whether Chad is a member of the school board liaison, he knows for sure, but they should be moving to their new facility sometime in July. You don't know that. But that was the latest plan. But I don't think we have a conflict in July anyway, do we, Lois? And there's no meeting in August. So we're going to be back at the police headquarters, back on King William Street for the next meeting, and then return back to the council chambers the following month and hopefully stay here. Yes, June 16th, 2014. I know that'll be confusing for a lot of people because we're moving to a different location, but we had no choice. Councillor Whitehead, you had another point?
Well, just on the last motion for clarification, the policy would be a police services policy or would be a board policy in how we deal with the financing? Help me understand whose policy it is. Okay, so if it's a board's policy, we do have a policy governance committee, Mr. Chair.
Our organization here, yes.
So I would suggest that it would be forwarded to the policy advisory committee for the development. Thank you.
Two orders of new business, Chair. The first is I'm going to ask Superintendent Clark to speak to the issue and update the board in relation to the implementation of the CEWs. We came to the board with our plan, and the ministry has not approved one of the devices, so I'd ask Superintendent Clark to inform you of what our alternative strategy for implementation is going to be.
Superintendent?
Thank you, Chief. Presently, we use the X26 models. These are being phased out by TASER as of December 2014, which means they will no longer repair these warranty parts after a 4-year period. The replacement tasers are the X26Ps. They're very similar in cost, they're more durable, and they're also more reliable. The difference in price is about $50. The testing has been done. It's with the ministry now on these new X26Ps. The ministry has chosen not to approve these until after the election, which creates some problems for us. We are officially will be done the training as of June. We'd like to go forward and purchase these, but obviously to move forward creates some problems for us down the road. So we were planning on purchasing 75 tasers, but if we purchase the old models, they also require old style holsters. So my recommendation is that we purchase 30 tasers of the old style, implement these. This will give, with our existing inventory, that'll provide over 50% of our front line will have tasers by September. We're looking at a 4 to 6 weeks to actually get these tasers in our hands once we order those. The cost of a taser is about $1,500. So obviously this would push some of our budgeting to the future. when the new tasers are approved. When the new tasers are approved, we would purchase 75 of these for the front line. These 30 tasers then, we would put in the hands of our plainclothes officers. We can't have frontline officers having an old taser one day and a new taser the next, because they are slightly different. So obviously the old tasers would still have a use with us, but they would be phased out over time with the plainclothes. So I think this is probably the best solution to get us to when the new tasers are approved.
So for clarity for the board then, Debbie, you're saying that rather than just buying all the new ones right now, you can't because the ministry hasn't approved them yet?
The tasers would not be allowed to be used because they're not approved by the ministry.
When do you expect that approval?
Well, to be perfectly honest, this was supposed to happen in January. It got pushed to March, and then when the election got called, they're saying that they're going to push it till after the election. So in good conscience, I cannot give you a date. I'm hoping early fall.
So that's a cabinet decision, not a staff decision of the ministry?
It's a ministry decision. I'm not really sure
The
how that
staff,
works out.
because I'm not sure cabinet ministers know what type of taser to purchase, but because only the political decisions are shut down, not the business of the day, not the government isn't shut down.
That's the decision they've made, and we have no control over that.
Chief, you're ready to push the button. You got a comment?
I think we clearly need to identify for the board, this is not going to create or push a budget pressure because the money is already allocated for this and secured. So we're fine on the budget side of this. The risk to this is that our plan was to have the officers trained, receive the devices, and cover the whole front line. The risk for the service and for our members is that only 50% at this point until the new taser gets approved, and then we get implementation on the front line. So there's going to be a short period of time where the risk and liability is that about 50% of our frontline officers will have them and 50% will not. The nature of the calls, where the calls are, the busyness of the night, that causes a risk for us. But we're trying to mitigate that risk through the strategy of getting as many on the road as we can because we know that they are life-saving tools that the board has already approved.
Is there not financial risk too, Chief, in that if they won't service them after December, they're obsolete in 6 months?
Well, there's going to be, with the purchase of the old, they're not going to support them for as long. That's going to become an issue for us later in this.
Well, what's the downside? Just wait till they approve them and get all new?
The downside of waiting is that we actually don't know when they're going to approve them. If they don't get around to October, November, every minute of every day that our people are out there without the tool available to them, taking into consideration the research that was presented to the board, the 10 or 12 provincial inquests with jury recommendations to implement the taser, the triple inquest in Toronto, again, a recommendation on implementation of the taser. We've approved it, and we're moving forward. The risk is if we don't do it and we have an incident tomorrow, then we're on, then that risk and liability, I think, is
But we have gone 150 years without tasers, and I'm wondering whether a resolution from this board to council to get a resolution to the province to get these things approved now would be in order, so that you're not buying obsolete technology.
I would agree. Our risk is that we have the devices, we have some of the devices, they're in a limited capacity, and we've made the commitment to put them out there. Have an incident that takes place tomorrow, I think that's where our liability lies.
Wait in.
I actually have an issue with, a little bit of it, that it's an interpretation issue. It's at the Treasury Board. Everyone's on side, but there's no political master to actually intervene and get the decision. I don't think this is much different. So it is sort of hung up, unfortunately, because of the provincial election. I think what is being suggested is prudent. It shows that we're making best efforts. If there's any case of liability, it's showing that we're making a practical decision by outfitting as many as we practically can under these circumstances. So I wholeheartedly support the direction that has been put forward.
Well,
I don't think this is a capital issue. I think this is a safety issue, and I think what you've presented is fantastic, and I wholly support it. I think we should.
Nancy?
So can I put a motion on the table then?
You sure
that we
can.
go ahead with the recommendation of Superintendent Debbie Clark as it relates to the purchase of the tasers?
Second to that? Madeline? Discussion on the motion? All in favor? Carried.
The last item of new business, Chair and members of the board, it's an honor to once again inform the board of the excellent work of the men and women of the Hamilton Police Service. And we talk a lot about the use of technology and business process reengineering. The service has been recognized by Niche, our records management system, for the 2014 Innovation and Efficiency Award of the Year. This is in relation to something we started about 3 years ago, which was flowed from the property audit. You saw the presentation last time on the property module and how that is saving time and resources in the handling of property, plus clearing our spaces out for storage. And the members of the team under the direction of Acting Inspector Evans and particularly Margaret Couch went down and received the award. But not only that, they were able to present the property module that you saw to an international audience and received a great acclaim for the work, and they received that award and brought that back for us as well this year.
Okay, so no action required? Thank you. So any other business? Councillor Collins.
For you to the chief, the bus rapid transit lanes that have been in place now, how have we fared operationally with those?
I think I have had an opportunity to have that process reviewed by Superintendent Calvert. There was a report that was authored by our traffic people in relation to some of the issues. We had very significant issues around signage. We had issues around the paint on the lanes wearing off and not being able to do proper levels of enforcement. For us as a service, I would say that there has been some impact due to the congestion downtown. Our officers, anecdotally, I don't have a performance measurement for it, but anecdotally will tell you that they will avoid the traffic disruptions there in order to get to the places that they need to go. So they are actually probably spending less patrol time on that main thoroughfare. The issue of the enforcement component has been problematic. With respect to the education part, I think there's a lot more work that needs to go into that. In an effort to advance that, I've met personally with both councillors that are leading that initiative to explain our concerns to them and leave it with the city. I understand that there is a city committee that is structured to look at the bus lanes and see over time. We will participate in that, bring our ideas forward. We have some concerns about the bus lane being in the second lane, and the curb lane is actually lost. If you stand and make observations there for a period of time, you'll see vehicles in the two left lanes. You'll see the bus lane. But there's an entire curb lane there that is not getting used. So we've got 10, 12 feet of asphalt as a travel part of the roadway that is not being serviced with any vehicles. So there has to be some more dialogue on how to do this or how to alter this if we're going to continue. The other issue that we have seen is the issue of parking and parking changing, where it was to be treated as a prohibited area during certain times, and there was no parking. There is now parking allowed on the north side, and that means that vehicles are being left there, so we have now parking. Then we have a vehicle lane and a bus lane. So we've taken 4 lanes of traffic and we've put them down to 2. So that's causing us some concerns as well. As far as the community needs to know with respect to public service emergency response, we are not interfered with in any way, and our vehicles are able to traverse the city and get to those 911 calls in the regular response times. And I would ask Superintendent Calvert if he has anything to add.
Mr. Chair, recently, as of about 2 weeks ago, our traffic sergeant did speak with the subcommittee, and they have recently improved the paint, redone the painting, the signage, etc. So we've committed to enforcing, as we do all provincial bylaws and provincial offences, in the same manner. So we have had those conversations as recently as 2 weeks ago. So we are good to go, as they say.
And sorry, we've commenced enforcement now. We have issued tickets for those who are violating the bylaw that's been established.
We are in a position to issue tickets. Whether we've issued any or not, I can't say. I haven't checked.
Okay. And to be clear, this is a pilot, so HPS staff will be part of the findings. I mean, I hear that we've participated to date, but we will have a formal response at some point in time with whether it's positive criticism or some of the issues, service issues that we've experienced. We will be formally part of that feedback that will be forwarded eventually, I guess, to council. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
We've asked that our officers have a seat at that table to make our concerns known.
Great, thank you.
Any other items of new business? Seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn. Madeline?
I was privileged to be in attendance at the commemoration of International Day Against Homophobia last week during Police Week, and the positive building relationship between the LGBTQ and the Hamilton Police, positive gains, and the establishment of the positive space facilities within. So hats off to the Hamilton Police Service for engaging very actively and positively with the community. Deidre spoke so, positive about the inroads that they've made. And so I just wanted to say how privileged I was to have that moment when the police and a community that's been so marginalized, so victim of assault is seen as such an important day within the Hamilton Police Service. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead?
Actually, I did send a note to the chief thanking a number of officers that participated in Cleanup Day in one of those troubled neighborhoods where the karate kids got out, the commercial area got out, they got the residents out. I can't say enough about the officers that were involved, integrating with the community and working with them. And the response I got from the communities, they just couldn't believe. It's like they were working with, as opposed to being a police officer, working with one of their neighbors in that cleanup. So I really want to extend my thank you to each and every one of those officers. Unfortunately, I don't have the names in front of me. I'm going to ask the chief if he remembers who they were. So I'd love to have them identified.
I can bring that forward next time. I don't have it readily available here, but that information was forwarded on to the officers and shared with them so that then they're...
Thank you.
Any other items of new business? Seeing none, motion to adjourn for 10 minutes. All in favor? Carried.